Imagine being 16 years old and leading an army of 500 knights against 26,000 enemy soldiers. Now imagine doing it while your body's literally falling apart piece by piece. Your fingers don't work anymore. Your face is rotting behind a silver mask. Every movement sends lightning bolts of agony through your deteriorating limbs, and you absolutely know, that you're going to die young. This isn't fiction. This is the story of Baldwin IV of Jerusalem, the leper king who should have been a footnote in history but instead became a legend. A teenager with an expiration date who humiliated the greatest Muslim general of the medieval world. A dying boy who held together a fractured kingdom through sheer force of will. The year is 1127. The place is a dusty road near a forgotten town called Montgisard. And what happens next will echo through 8 centuries of history. If you're into stories about impossible odds and the darkest chapters of human history, hit that subscribe button. Because we're about to dive deep into one of the most brutal and beautiful tales the Crusades ever produced. Drop a comment and let me know if you've ever heard of Baldwin IV before watching this. Let me take you back to where it all began. Not to the battles or the glory, but to a quiet moment in a palace, when a tutor discovered something that would change everything. It's 1165 in Jerusalem. The holiest city in Christendom is now a Crusader kingdom, carved out of the Holy Land through blood and religious fervour decades earlier. In the royal palace, a 9-year-old boy named Baldwin is studying with his tutor, William of Tyre. William is a brilliant scholar, one of those Renaissance men who speaks multiple languages and knows history, theology and philosophy. He's fond of young Baldwin. The boy is sharp, curious, asks intelligent questions. There's just one problem William has started to notice. During their lessons, William sometimes tests Baldwin's attentiveness by pinching the boy's arm. It's a common teaching technique, a little pain to keep students focused. But Baldwin never reacts. At first, William thinks the prince is just incredibly stoic, showing that royal composure even as a child. But then he notices something else. When Baldwin plays with other children, he doesn't pull back when he should. A rough game, a scrape, a pinch from another boy, nothing. No wince, no cry, nothing. William's blood runs cold because he knows exactly what this means. In medieval Jerusalem, physicians and scholars understand one disease better than almost anyone in Europe: leprosy. It's everywhere in the Levant, a constant spectre that terrifies crusaders and locals alike. And the very first symptom, the telltale sign that appears before anything else, is loss of sensation. The tutor goes to Baldwin's father, King Amalric I, with his terrible suspicion. Physicians are summoned. They examine the boy carefully, professionally, clinically, and they confirm what William feared. Prince Baldwin has leprosy. Let that sink in for a moment. This isn't just any disease. In the 12th century, leprosy is a death sentence wrapped in supernatural horror. People believe it's punishment from God, that lepers are marked by divine judgment for their sins, or the sins of their parents. Lepers are forced to live outside cities, to ring bells announcing their presence, to shout "unclean, unclean" so others can avoid them. They're legally dead in many places. Their property can be seized, their marriages annulled, and this child, this 9-year-old boy, is the heir to the Kingdom of Jerusalem, the future king of the most important Christian realm in the world. King Amalric faces an impossible choice. He could hide Baldwin's diagnosis, but that's temporary at best. He could disinherit him, name another heir, but that would throw the kingdom into political chaos. Or he could do something unprecedented, acknowledge the diagnosis and prepare Baldwin to rule anyway. Amalric chooses the third option. It's either incredibly brave or incredibly reckless, depending on how you look at it. He decides that his son will be educated as a king should be. Disease be damned. Baldwin continues his studies with William of Tyre. He learns Latin, Greek, military strategy, statecraft, history. He trains in combat despite his condition, though he has to adapt constantly as the disease progresses. William later writes that Baldwin possesses a keen intellect and a retentive memory. The boy devours knowledge like he's running out of time, which of course he is. He's playing chess with a clock nobody can see but everyone knows is ticking. For 5 years, Baldwin grows up in this strange limbo. He's a prince being prepared for kingship, but everyone knows he's dying. The other nobles watch him carefully, calculating, making alliances for what comes after. Some pity him, others see opportunity. The kingdom is like a pot of water slowly coming to a boil. Then, in 1174, King Amalric dies suddenly of dysentery. He's only 38 years old, and 13-year-old Baldwin, the leper prince, becomes Baldwin IV, King of Jerusalem. The coronation is a surreal affair. This teenage boy, already showing visible signs of his disease, is crowned with the same holy oil used for Charlemagne. He's draped in royal purple and gold. He holds the sceptre and orb with hands that can barely feel them. And everyone in that church knows this king is temporary, a placeholder, a dying boy sitting on a throne that will soon need a new occupant. But here's what none of them understand yet. Baldwin IV isn't planning to be a placeholder for anyone. Let's talk about the nightmare Baldwin inherits when he becomes king at 13. The kingdom of Jerusalem in 1174 is not some unified, glorious Christian realm. It's a viper's nest of competing ambitions, fragile alliances, and barely contained civil war. Imagine trying to run a country where half your nobles want you dead, not because they hate you personally, but because you're inconvenient. The power structure looks like this. You've got the old Crusader families who've been in the Holy Land for generations. They've adapted to the region, learned Arabic, married local Christians, made treaties with Muslim neighbours. They understand that survival in this land means pragmatism and compromise. Then you've got the newcomers, fresh arrivals from Europe with their religious zeal intact. They want total war, complete victory, the destruction of every Muslim within 100 miles. They think the old families have gone soft, become corrupted by Eastern influence. At the centre of this mess sits Raymond III of Tripoli. He's the most powerful baron in the kingdom, a brilliant politician and military commander. He was regent before Baldwin came of age, and he represents the pragmatic faction. Raymond wants peace with Saladin, wants to consolidate what the Crusaders have rather than risk everything on expansion. Then there's Raynald of Châtillon. Holy hell, Raynald! If you were designing a villain for a movie about the Crusades, you'd create Raynald. This guy is a pirate, a warrior, a psychopath wrapped in chainmail. He's been a prisoner of Muslims for 16 years. They held him in Aleppo where he was tortured, humiliated, kept in a pit. When he finally got released, he came back with a burning, insatiable hatred. Raynald breaks truces, attacks Muslim caravans, raids villages. He once planned to attack Mecca itself, the holiest site in Islam, just to provoke a reaction. He's chaos incarnate, and he has no patience for diplomacy or restraint. Between these two extremes stands 13-year-old Baldwin, a dying boy who's supposed to somehow hold this kingdom together. Oh, and I haven't even mentioned the biggest problem yet, Saladin. Salah ad-Din Yusuf ibn Ayyub, known to history as Saladin, is rising to power in Egypt and Syria. He's in his 30s, brilliant, charismatic, and deeply religious. His goal is simple: unite the Muslim world under his banner and take back Jerusalem. He's methodical, patient, and absolutely ruthless when necessary. When Baldwin becomes king, Saladin sees an opportunity. A child king with leprosy, a kingdom divided by internal factions. This is the moment to strike. He begins probing the kingdom's defences, testing response times, looking for weakness. Baldwin's first years as king are a crash course in political survival. He has to balance Raymond's caution against Raynald's aggression. He has to keep the military orders, the Knights Templar and Hospitaller, from going rogue. He has to manage visiting Crusaders from Europe who don't understand the complex dynamics of the region. And he has to do all this while his body's betraying him. By age 15, Baldwin's hands are starting to claw. The disease is attacking his nerve endings, causing his fingers to curl into useless claws. He can't grip a sword properly anymore. He has to have servants help him dress. The sensation of touch is almost completely gone from his extremities, but his mind is sharp as a Damascus blade. Baldwin makes a crucial early decision. He appoints Miles of Plancy as his bailiff, essentially his chief administrator. Miles is competent but unpopular, and within a year he's assassinated in the streets of Acre. It's Baldwin's first harsh lesson in Crusader politics. Trust the wrong person and they die. Or worse, you die. So Baldwin pivots. He brings in his mother's family, the Courtenays. He appoints Jocelyn III of Edessa as seneschal. He's building a power base of people loyal to him personally, not to factions. The nobles watch this teenage leper king manoeuvring through court politics, and they start to realise something unsettling. Baldwin might be dying, but he's not weak. He's learning, adapting. Playing the game better than they expected. In 1176, Saladin marches on the kingdom with a large army. He's testing the new king, expecting maybe a panicked response or a defensive crouch behind castle walls. Instead, Baldwin rides out to meet him. At 16 years old, barely able to hold his reins, Baldwin musters the army and confronts Saladin near Ascalon. It's not a major battle, more of a skirmish really, but Saladin backs down. He retreats, because this sick teenager just showed he's willing to fight. Saladin's watching now. He's curious about this leper king. He sends spies to Jerusalem gathering information. What he learns surprises him. Baldwin is studious, strategic, beloved by many of his people despite his disease. He's not just a placeholder, he's a problem. The stage is set for what comes next. Saladin has finished consolidating power in Egypt. He's ready to make his move on Jerusalem. He gathers the largest army he's ever commanded, 26,000 men, cavalry, infantry, archers. It's an overwhelming force designed to crush the Crusader kingdom once and for all, November 1177. Saladin crosses into Crusader territory and begins his march toward Jerusalem. His army is so large it takes hours to pass a single point. The ground shakes with the thunder of hooves. This is it, the invasion that will break the kingdom. But someone is about to make a catastrophic mistake, and that someone is not Baldwin. Picture this. It's late November 1177. Saladin's massive army is pillaging its way through the southern part of the Kingdom of Jerusalem. They've bypassed the major fortresses, heading straight for the undefended heartland. Muslim scouts report that the main Crusader army is far to the north, nowhere near enough to stop them. Saladin is confident. Why wouldn't he be? He has 26,000 men. Intelligence suggests the Crusaders can barely muster a few thousand. The weather is on his side. Rainy season is starting, which will hamper any Crusader cavalry charge. His soldiers are experienced, battle-hardened veterans from multiple campaigns. King Baldwin IV is in Ascalon, a coastal fortress city, when he receives word of Saladin's invasion. He's 16 years old. His hands are clawed, he can barely grip a sword. He has perhaps 500 knights immediately available, plus some infantry, maybe 8,500 men total if he scrapes together every available soldier in the vicinity. Any sane military commander would do the math and retreat. Fall back to Jerusalem, consolidate forces, wait behind castle walls for reinforcements. But Baldwin doesn't do that. He sends out a call to arms to every available knight in the region. He rallies the Templar Order, and then he makes a decision that would seem insane to any military academy. He's going to attack Saladin's army. Let me repeat that. 500 knights against 26,000 soldiers. The odds are roughly 1 to 50. This isn't David versus Goliath. This is David versus Goliath's entire extended family, their army and all their friends. Baldwin's own advisors think he's lost his mind. Maybe the leprosy has affected his brain, they whisper. Maybe the disease has finally broken something essential. But Baldwin isn't crazy. He's calculated something everyone else missed. Saladin has made a mistake. A small one, but fatal. His army has been plundering the countryside for days. They're weighed down with loot, livestock, treasure, prisoners. Their formation is loose, spread out, undisciplined. They're not expecting a fight because their intelligence says the Crusader army's nowhere nearby. Most critically, Saladin has separated his main force from his vanguard, which is out scouting ahead. Baldwin knows all this because Crusader scouts have been shadowing Saladin's army, sending back detailed reports, and Baldwin sees something no one else does: a window. A tiny, closing window of opportunity where if he moves fast enough, hits hard enough, he might catch Saladin's army at its most vulnerable. On November 25th, 1177, Baldwin's small force begins marching towards Saladin's position. They move quickly, quietly, staying out of sight of Muslim scouts. The Templar master, Odo de Saint-Amand, rides at Baldwin's side. Reynaud of Châtillon has joined them. This is exactly his kind of insane military operation. As they march, Baldwin can barely stay in his saddle. He's in constant pain. His attendants have to adjust his position every few miles because he can't feel when his legs start to cramp, but he keeps moving forward, leading from the front because that's what kings do. That's what this specific king does. They reach a small hill near the town of Montgisard, and from there, Baldwin can see Saladin's army stretched across the valley below. It's massive, overwhelming, a sea of men and horses and banners. The numbers are even worse than reported. This isn't just 26,000, it might be closer to 30,000. Baldwin's knights look at their teenage king sitting hunched in his saddle, his silver mask glinting in the morning sun. They're waiting for orders. Some probably expect him to call off the attack now that they can see what they're up against. Instead, Baldwin orders them to dismount. He has the true cross brought forward, a relic containing pieces of the cross Christ was crucified on. It's the holiest artifact in the kingdom, only brought out for the most desperate situations. They kneel before it, pray, receive blessing from the Bishop of Bethlehem who accompanied them. Then Baldwin gives a speech. We don't have the exact words, William of Tyre wasn't there to record them, but we know the effect. He reminds these knights why they came to the Holy Land. He speaks of their duty to protect Jerusalem, to defend Christendom. He points to the massive army below and tells them that God favours the righteous, not the numerous. And then he says something that becomes legendary. They will not retreat. They will not surrender. They will charge straight into the heart of Saladin's army, and they will break it, or they will die trying. There is no third option. The knights mount up. 500 heavily armoured cavalrymen arranged in a wedge formation with Baldwin at the point. Think about the physics of medieval cavalry for a moment. A mounted knight in full armour, charging at full speed, is like a guided missile. The horse alone weighs over 1,000 pounds. Add armour, rider, lance, momentum, it's devastating. But only if you hit the right target at the right moment. Baldwin waits. Saladin's army below is still disorganised, strung out along the road. Then Baldwin sees what he's been waiting for, a gap in the formation, a vulnerable spot where the army's flank is exposed. He gives the order, they charge. Imagine the sound. 500 horses accelerating to a gallop down a hillside. The thunder of hooves on hard ground, the creaking of leather, the clanking of armour, the war cries of knights who know they're probably riding to their deaths, but doing it anyway. They slam into Saladin's flank like a hammer hitting glass. The impact is catastrophic. Lances punch through armour, horses bowl over infantry. The Crusader knights drive deep into the Muslim formation, and everything turns to chaos. Saladin's army had been relaxed, unprepared for battle. Now suddenly they're under attack from a direction they didn't expect, hit by a formation of heavy cavalry at full charge. Soldiers scramble for weapons, commanders try to organise a response, but it's too late. The Crusaders are already among them, sowing destruction. Baldwin is in the thick of it. Despite his deteriorating body, despite being unable to properly grip his reins, he's there, leading the charge. Attendants ride close to protect him, but Baldwin isn't sitting back. He's pushing forward, forcing the attack deeper into Saladin's formation. The Muslim army tries to regroup. They massively outnumber the Crusaders. If they can just organise, they'll crush this insane charge through sheer weight of numbers. But Baldwin keeps the pressure on. Every time a Muslim unit tries to form up, the Crusaders smash into it, break it apart, keep moving. Saladin himself is somewhere in the chaos, trying desperately to rally his men, but the panic is spreading. Rumours fly through the Muslim ranks. The Crusaders have an enormous army. This is a trap. We're surrounded. None of it is true, but in the chaos of battle, truth doesn't matter. Fear is contagious. What happens next defies military logic. Saladin's massive army breaks. They run. 30,000 men fleeing from 500 knights. It becomes a rout, then a massacre. The Crusaders pursue them for miles, cutting down soldiers who throw away their weapons and flee in terror. By the end of the day, Saladin's invasion force is destroyed. 90% casualties. The survivors, including Saladin himself, barely escape back to Egypt with their lives. Saladin has to ride a racing camel to outpace the pursuing Crusaders, leaving behind his tent, his personal belongings, his military equipment, everything. Baldwin IV, the 16-year-old leper king who could barely sit on his horse, has just won one of the most improbable military victories in medieval history. Against impossible odds, through perfect timing and absolute courage, he saved Jerusalem. After Montgisard, Baldwin becomes a legend. Songs are written about the Leper King who defeated Saladin. Pilgrims coming to Jerusalem ask to see him. The other nobles, even those who thought he was just a placeholder, start to respect him. Some even fear him. But the disease doesn't care about legends. By 1180, when Baldwin is 19, leprosy is ravaging his body with accelerating brutality. His hands are completely clawed now, useless for anything except the most basic gripping. He wears gloves constantly to hide their appearance. His face is deteriorating. Lesions, discoloration, the slow death of tissue. He starts wearing a silver mask in public, not just for his own privacy, but to spare others the discomfort of looking at him. The mask becomes his symbol. It's beautiful and terrible at once, crafted by the finest artisans in Jerusalem, decorated with religious imagery, fitted perfectly to his ruined face. When Baldwin holds court, he sits on his throne wearing that silver face, and it's impossible to read his expressions. Is he angry? Sad? In pain? The mask reveals nothing. Walking becomes difficult. Baldwin needs help mounting his horse. During military campaigns, he sometimes has to be carried in a litter because he can't stay in the saddle. His attendants become expert at hiding just how severe his condition has become, but everyone knows you can't hide leprosy forever, and the political situation isn't helping. Remember Reynald of Châtillon, a pirate psychopath? In 1180, he attacks a massive Muslim caravan during a truce period, stealing everything and taking prisoners. This isn't just a raid, it's a massive violation of a peace treaty Baldwin personally negotiated with Saladin. Reynald's defense: "I'm lord of my lands. I didn't agree to any truce." Baldwin is furious. He demands Reynald release the prisoners and return the loot. Reynald refuses, and here's Baldwin's problem. He needs Reynald. The man is a brilliant military commander, and Baldwin's kingdom is too fragile to alienate major nobles. So Baldwin has to swallow the insult, knowing it will provoke Saladin into war. He's right. Saladin declares the truce broken and begins organising another invasion. This time, he's not making the mistakes he made at Montgisard. In 1182, Saladin invades with a massive, well-organised army, and Baldwin, now 21 and barely able to move without assistance, rides out to meet him. The two armies face each other near the castle of Belvoir. It's not a full battle, more of a tense standoff. Saladin probes the Crusader defences looking for weakness. Baldwin's forces hold position, refusing to be drawn into disadvantageous terrain. For days the two armies circle each other. It's psychological warfare now. Saladin knows Baldwin is dying. He's waiting, patient, for the young king's body to give out. But Baldwin refuses to break. Despite being strapped to his horse, despite barely being able to see through the progression of his disease, he maintains army discipline and holds the line. Eventually Saladin withdraws. He hasn't been defeated exactly, but he hasn't won either. The young Leper King has stymied him again, but Baldwin is running out of time and he knows it. By 1183, he's 22 years old and going blind. The leprosy has affected his eyes. He can make out shapes, movement, light and dark, but fine details are gone. He starts relying more on his advisors to describe what's happening around him. Think about that for a moment. A blind, crippled king trying to rule a kingdom on the verge of civil war, facing the greatest Muslim general of the age. It should be impossible. It is impossible. But Baldwin is still here, still fighting. He makes a decision. He needs to secure the succession. He can't marry. Who would marry a leper? And even if someone agreed, he's probably unable to consummate the marriage at this point. So he focuses on his sister, Sibylla. Sibylla is married to Guy de Lusignan, a French nobleman who's everything Baldwin isn't. Handsome, healthy, vigorous. He's also arrogant, incompetent, and politically tone-deaf. Baldwin doesn't trust Guy. None of the experienced nobles trust Guy. But he's married to the king's sister, which gives him a claim to the throne. Baldwin tries to have Sibylla's marriage annulled. When that fails, he has Guy removed from power and tries to crown Sibylla's young son, Baldwin IV, as co-king. It's a desperate attempt to bypass Guy entirely. The child is crowned in a rushed ceremony in 1183. While Baldwin IV watches from his throne, his silver mask reflecting torchlight, his ruined body dressed in royal purple. It's one of the saddest images in Crusader history. A dying 22-year-old king, blind and crippled, crowning a 5-year-old child as his successor, knowing he's running out of options to save his kingdom from the chaos that will follow his death. Saladin invades again in 1183, and this time it's serious. He's brought an enormous army and he's not playing games. He lays siege to Kerak, one of the major Crusader fortresses, during a wedding celebration. Reynold of Chatillon's stepson is getting married, and suddenly they're under siege with all the wedding guests trapped inside. Baldwin is in Jerusalem when he hears the news. He's almost completely blind now. He can barely move without help. His advisors tell him it's impossible. He cannot lead an army to relieve Kerak. He needs to send someone else. Baldwin refuses. He will lead the army himself or Kerak will fall. They strap him to his horse. His attendants have to describe the terrain ahead, guide his mount, keep him from falling. The army marches south, and at its head rides a blind, dying king in silver mask, held upright by sheer force of will. When Saladin's scouts report that Baldwin is coming, that the Leper King himself is leading the relief force, Saladin makes a choice. He lifts the siege and withdraws. Later, Muslim chroniclers try to explain this decision strategically, but the truth is simpler. Saladin does not want to face Baldwin IV in battle again. Not after Montgisard, not after the psychological victories that followed. One dying king on horseback forces the great Saladin to retreat without a fight. But it's Baldwin's last campaign. When he returns to Jerusalem, he's completely spent. His body is shutting down. The leprosy has ravaged everything. His hands, his feet, his face, his eyes. He's in constant, unimaginable pain. He can't sleep. He can barely eat. And he knows, with absolute certainty, that death is coming soon. In early 1185, Baldwin knows he's dying. He's 23 years old, and his body has endured more than most people experience in a full lifetime of suffering. The pain is constant now, a companion that never leaves, a fire that burns through every hour of every day. He summons his closest advisors and makes his final arrangements. He formally confirms young Baldwin V as his successor. He tries one last time to ensure Guy de Lusignan won't take power, makes people swear oaths, writes letters to the Pope and the kings of Europe asking them to protect the kingdom when he's gone. But Baldwin knows, they all know, that the moment he dies, the political agreements will fall apart. The kingdom will tear itself to pieces fighting over the succession. Everything he's held together through sheer will is going to collapse. In March 1185, Baldwin's condition deteriorates rapidly. The chroniclers don't give us much detail about his final days, probably because they were too horrible to describe. Medieval leprosy in its final stages involves the progressive death of extremities, massive infection, organ failure. Baldwin's body is literally falling apart. On March 16, 1185, King Baldwin IV of Jerusalem dies in his bed, surrounded by priests and attendants, his ruined body finally giving out after years of fighting an unwinnable war against disease. He was 23 years old. He'd been king for 11 years. He'd never lost a battle to Saladin. The mourning in Jerusalem is genuine and widespread. Even people who opposed Baldwin politically respect what he accomplished. The chroniclers, Christian and Muslim alike, write about him with a kind of awe. This dying boy had held back the tide through sheer determination and brilliant strategy. He'd won impossible victories, kept a fractious kingdom united, and faced down the greatest general of the age multiple times. William of Tyre, his old tutor, writes, "Although he was a leper, he was valiant and prudent, and brought consolation to his people." It's a simple epitaph, but it captures something essential. Despite everything, Baldwin brought hope to his kingdom. The Muslim historian Ibn al-Athir, who was no friend to the Crusaders, writes that Baldwin was very determined in character, and in spite of his illness he paid attention to the administration of the kingdom and to the conduct of war. Even Saladin, who spent years fighting Baldwin, speaks of him with respect. Years later, when asked about his Crusader opponents, Saladin singles out Baldwin as the most formidable enemy he faced, not because of numbers or resources, but because of will and intelligence. But respect doesn't save kingdoms. Within 2 years of Baldwin's death, everything he feared comes to pass. Young Baldwin V dies in 1186. Possible poisoning, though we can't be sure. Guy de Lusignan becomes king through his marriage to Sibylla, despite all of Baldwin's efforts to prevent it. Guy is every bit the disaster Baldwin predicted. In 1187 he makes catastrophically bad military decisions, ignoring the advice of experienced commanders. At the Battle of Hattin, he allows Saladin to trap the entire Crusader army in waterless terrain during summer. The result is complete destruction. The Crusader army is annihilated, the True Cross is captured, the military orders are decimated. 3 months later, Saladin enters Jerusalem in triumph. The kingdom Baldwin fought so hard to protect falls in less than 2 years after his death. Everything the Leper King accomplished seems to have been for nothing. Except, it wasn't. Not really. Here's what Baldwin IV left behind: a legend that refused to die with his diseased body. The Kingdom of Jerusalem was re-established after the Third Crusade, though never with its former power. But the story of the Leper King who defeated Saladin at Montgisard became one of the defining tales of the Crusades. It spread through Europe, was told in poems and songs, became part of the mythology of Christian knighthood. Baldwin's silver mask became iconic. Centuries later, artists and writers would depict him in that mask, a tragic figure who embodied both the horror and glory of the crusading movement. He became a symbol of courage in the face of impossible odds, of duty overcoming suffering. But let's be honest about what Baldwin's story really represents. He was a product of his time, a Crusader king fighting religious wars that caused immense suffering on all sides. The Kingdom of Jerusalem was built on conquest and sustained by periodic violence. Baldwin's victories meant Muslim deaths, destroyed families, continued occupation of lands that Muslims considered theirs. At the same time, Baldwin himself displayed remarkable qualities that transcend his historical context. His courage was genuine. His strategic brilliance was real. The way he refused to let his disease define him or limit him inspired people then and continues to inspire people now. He's become a kind of Rorschach test for how people view the Crusades. Some see him as a heroic defender of Christendom. Others see him as an occupier who happened to be sympathetic. Some focus on his disease and his triumph over it. Others can't separate his personal story from the larger context of religious warfare. Here's what I think. Baldwin IV was a dying teenager thrust into an impossible situation who chose to fight rather than surrender. He made the most of limited time and resources. He showed that disability doesn't mean inability. He proved that strategic thinking and determination can overcome massive disadvantages. He was also part of a brutal religious conflict that caused tremendous suffering. His victories prolonged a Crusader kingdom that many today view as fundamentally unjust. His alliance with people like Reynald of Châtillon associated him with genuine atrocities. History isn't simple. People aren't simple. Baldwin IV was both the heroic Leper King and a Crusader warrior. He was brave and strategic and also part of a religious war machine. He inspired genuine loyalty and also benefited from medieval power structures built on violence. If this story hit you the way it hit me when I first learned about it, do me a favour. Drop a comment with your thoughts. What part of Baldwin's story resonated with you? And if you want more deep dives into the darkest, most fascinating corners of history, subscribe and hit that notification bell. Trust me, we're just getting started. I'll see you in the next one.